My name is Aji, and welcome back to the What's Worth Watching channel, a channel for TV and film lovers who want real, agenda-free views on the latest releases. And in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the new season of Squid Game, and why I believe that it wasn't quite able to match the hype of the first season, but ultimately why that was never likely to happen. And just so you know, this discussion will include plenty of spoilers. Now, going into this latest season of Squid Game, I had my expectations in check. Not because I expected it to be bad, but because the first season set a very high bar. It was a brilliantly dark and unique take on the Battle Royale format that offered sharp social commentary on capitalism and power, whilst providing us with engaging characters, ultra-violent games, as well as moments of genuine emotion. Season 2 takes place 3 years after the events of the first season. Having left the Squid Games victorious, Ji-hun is left traumatised by the events of Season 1. He's obsessed with finding proof of the Squid Games in the hope that he can get them shut down for good and put an end to this bloody cycle. Despite his winnings, Ji-hun does not feel like a winner. To him, this is blood money. And from the very first scene, you can tell that we're witnessing a very different Ji-hun, a more serious and intense version. Once again, Lee Jung-jae is tremendous in the role. Both Ji-hun and Jun-ho are desperate to prove to the world that the Squid Games exist, but it seems like an impossible task. Jun-ho obsessively continues to search for the island that he fell from, with the sailor who saved his life, and then Ji-hun has put his vast resources towards hiring a team, with the intention of finding the Squid Games recruiter. Eventually, members of Ji-hun's team are able to find the recruiter. This guy is absolutely batshit crazy, and undoubtedly one of the most sadistic characters I've seen in recent years, but it can only work so well due to such a brilliant, committed performance from the actor Gong Yoo. Despite being followed by Ji-hun's team, the recruiter is able to get the upper hand on them and abducts them, forcing them to play a deadly version of rock, paper, scissors. The recruiter is then able to confront Ji-hun, where he explains that he once killed his own father whilst working as a soldier for the Squid Games, explaining that he believes everyone who takes part are scum. In an attempt to show that Ji-hun is nothing more than trash, like the rest of the contestants, the recruiter challenges him to a game of Russian roulette, convinced that Ji-hun will cheat and shoot him, rather than risking his life. This doesn't end in the way he expected though, as Ji-hun doesn't back out, with the recruiter ending up blowing his own brains out. It was a shame to see the character depart the season so early, but what a way to do it. Jun-ho finally finds Ji-hun, and they discover a lead pointing to a Halloween party, with them suspecting that the frontman will be there. Things don't quite go to plan though, as Ji-hun realises that he will never get a chance to meet the frontman in the outside world, so requests to return to the Squid Games as a player, with the intention of taking down the competition from the inside. So after 2 episodes of build-up, by episode 3, we're finally back in the Squid Games. Whilst I'm glad that they took the time setting up Ji-hun's return, it left them with a lot to do if we were going to have a fully developed storyline, considering this was only a 7-episode season. One of the key strengths of the first season was the show's ability to get you invested in the contestants' storylines and root for them. This made every game far more visceral and intense, knowing that characters that you care about are putting their lives on the line. And whilst I never got the same level of emotional connection to the players in this season compared to how I felt towards people like Ali, Sebyok, and Ji-young, the show is able to introduce an engaging and varied new cast of characters with some very interesting dynamics. You've got player 333, who was a former YouTuber who lost money after being involved with a crypto scam, as well as player 222, who's his mistreated pregnant ex-girlfriend. Other key contestants include player 120, a transgender former special forces soldier, as well as players 149 and 007. A mother and son who entered to pay off the son's gambling debts. Having a mum and son in there together is a dynamic that we haven't seen before. That parent-child relationship inevitably comes with inherent loyalty, something that can help you but can also get you killed. So seeing how they would navigate each round added some extra flavour to the season. And then we get Thanos, a drug-addicted rapper who was a massive talking point this season. I admire the actor for his commitment to the role, but found his character to be borderline painful every time he was on the screen. I get that you're supposed to hate him, but his personality felt so cringeworthy and forced. Like, I can't imagine a world where people actually find him cool, yet they seem to worship him there. It didn't feel real to me, and was way too over the top, although it was super satisfying when he eventually meets a violent death, even if it was just a little too quick. At the end of the last season, it was revealed that Player One was actually the Squid Game's creator, a sick old man who wanted to finally give the games a go himself. This time, it's revealed that the new Player One is In-ho, Junho's brother, and the Squid Game's frontman. With this being revealed early on, it introduced a fascinating new dynamic to the show, and raised a lot of important questions, such as, what on earth is he doing there? Seeing him develop such a bond with Ji-hun was tragic, as you knew it wasn't going to end well for him, but the actor was able to portray the character in such a brilliantly charismatic way that it was easy to understand why Ji-hun would gravitate towards him. When it comes to a show like Squid Game, it's so important to include exciting games, and once again, they start off with Red Light Green Light, which I think was a good decision, as it's arguably the most iconic of the series. Whilst the novelty of seeing it for the first time can't be replicated, it was still entertaining seeing the players react as one by one the contestants were eliminated. Ji-hun tries his best to warn the players about what's to come, but he can only do so much, and we're quickly reminded just how brutal and violent the show is. Thankfully though, Season 2 is able to keep it fresh by introducing numerous fun new games that tested the players' resolve and humanity. Episode 6's Mingle was a clear standout for me, as it was a real test of character and friendship that led to some shocking deaths. It was horrifying and stressful, but I couldn't look away. This season, after each game, the players vote on whether to continue or leave with the current winnings. This meant that you got an insight into the players' minds, with them spending time breaking down their reasons for wanting to continue or not. In a show like this, where people are actively choosing to put themselves in life or death situations, it is easy for a show to stumble, because if you don't buy the reasoning, then the entire premise becomes unbelievable and ridiculous. But in this instance, everyone has their own reasons, and for the most part, you can understand them. It's about more than money for some, more than just extreme wealth. For some, it's a literal lifeline, and in that context, you can understand why they do it. Desperation and what desperate people will do to improve their lives was a core theme in Season 1, and that continues in Season 2. When people are disillusioned and hopeless, they will gamble their lives away for the chance of something better, even with just a slim chance of victory. This also relates to my main question going into the season. Why would Ji-hun go back into the Squid Games, considering what he already went through? How could he expect to end the game from within? It's impossible. Initially, it felt like he was doing it purely because Netflix needed a Season 2. And don't get me wrong, that's undoubtedly a huge factor, but it's actually another example of what desperation will do to people. Since leaving the first time, he's miserable. He's tried his best to prove the existence of the Squid Games, but this is his last-ditch attempt. Again, pure desperation drives this decision. Only by going back in and ending the games for good will he be able to move on and live with what he's been through. But this core theme doesn't only relate to the contestants, as in Season 2, we get a peek behind the curtain as to what drives the guards to work for the Squid Games, as Kang Noel, a former soldier and North Korean defector, shockingly becomes a guard. She dreams of being reunited with a young child, and is at pain due to the fact she was forced to leave him back in North Korea, even resorting to self-harm as a coping measure. This lucrative position as a guard will hopefully allow her to continue funding the search for a missing child, even though the chance of him turning up alive is slim. But again, when you're desperate and struggling to hold yourself together, it's easy to see why some can turn to extreme measures, whilst losing their humanity in the process. As the end of the season rapidly approaches, you can feel that it's building up to something, even though there are plenty of games left to play. With tensions gradually rising due to opposing viewpoints on whether to continue, by the finale, it descends into all-out war. Predicting that this will happen, Ji-hun convinces a small group of ex-players to remain hidden and use the fight as a distraction so that they can take the guards' weapons and storm the control room. The massive brawl in the first season was a highlight. I actually preferred how it was done this time around, as it's gradually built up and feels fully earned. It's dark, brutal, and harrowing, with a number of my favourite characters coming to their end. I swear, the writers know exactly how to make me feel like shit, but the fact that they can make me feel anything is a good sign. Because garnering an emotional reaction from your audience is a key sign of effective storytelling. Predictably, Ji-hun is unable to take over the control room, with him and his peers becoming overwhelmed by the guards, and he's thrown back into the Squid Games, ending the season on a cliffhanger, which I must say did feel anticlimactic. Not that it was bad per se, but more that it left with too many storylines left unresolved. This made it feel very frustrating, especially when you consider we've waited 3 years for this follow-up season. Honestly, this felt like an old school mid-season finale, like something you'd see regularly if you've watched shows like 24 or The Walking Dead, where it feels like it's building towards it, but by the end of the episode, there's still much more story to tell, with plenty of loose threads, and it sets you up for the next part of the season. When researching the show, I found out that the creator originally envisioned the second and third seasons as one, but split them up, because he had too many episodes for one season, and you can definitely tell, as it very much feels like a season split in half. Thankfully, we won't have to wait too long for the next season, as both seasons were shot back to back, meaning we'll have more Squid Games on our screens sometime later this year. Overall, whilst I don't think this season quite reaches the heights of the last, I must say that I did enjoy the season quite a bit. I was concerned that it was just going to be a retread, but thankfully it isn't, at least not completely. They're able to freshen things up and not just replay the last season. They subverted my expectations enough for the season to feel new, engaging, and more than just a cheap cash grab. Although, I think it's best that you view the season as merely a part 1, as otherwise, it feels a lot more unsatisfying, considering it is very much left open, with no real resolution, and we still have so many important questions. So with that being said, Season 2 of Squid Game gets a thumbs up from me, as it's certainly worth watching. It turns out that this upcoming season will be the last, with the show's creator not wanting it to overstay its welcome. So he's going to be left with a lot to do, but if he's able to stick the landing, I think that we'll look back at Season 2 as an important chapter of a brilliant 3-part story. Despite being a solid season of television, Squid Game wasn't able to match the hype of the first season. But realistically, that was practically impossible. They were never going to be able to replicate the hype of the first season, as that was such a unique experience. And that initial shock factor isn't there anymore. The first season was fantastic, and the hype was unprecedented. It broke so many viewing records for Netflix, and got much acclaim from critics, as well as audiences, so it was inevitable that there would be a drop-off in subsequent seasons. Regardless, this latest season was still a huge success for Netflix, and within the first 3 days of release, the second season had 68 million views, and ranked at number 1 in 92 countries. Whilst the acclaim wasn't quite on the same level of the first season, Season 2 still received a positive response from critics and audiences, with audience scores being slightly more mixed. But again, I'm putting a lot of the backlash down to not marketing the season as part 1, as that would have stopped it leaving a slightly sour taste for a lot of people. So, what did you think of the latest season of Squid Game? And will you be checking out the final season later this year? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more. And I'll see you next time for another video. Goodbye.